Hey boys and girls, today we're going to be rounding numbers to the nearest 10. I want to go over that fun little song that Miss Radzewski taught you yesterday to help us remember whether we are going to keep the number on the floor or round that number up the line. So, singing our rhyme over here, let's go through this together as a reminder. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, keep that number on the floor. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, round that number up the line. So in front of you, you should have your template here. We're going to put our name at the top, so go ahead and write your name. I'll write mine. And before we get started, we need to read the directions so that we know which number we are rounding. Read the directions with me. Round to the nearest 10. So the directions tell me that I'm going to be rounding to this place value. Please put a box around the word 10. I know that I'm going to be looking at the tens place, and that number is either going to stay on the floor or it's going to be going up the line. Let's do number 1 together. Our first number is the number 48. So remember when we put a box around our directions here, round to the nearest 10, which number is in my tens place? That's right, the number 4. I want you to put a square around the number 4. This number is the number that is either going to be staying the same or it's going to be going up the number line. And to determine whether or not it will stay on the floor or round up, we are going to look next door. So draw a little arrow over here to our ones place. I have an 8 in my ones place. So going back to our rhyme over here, is that number a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4? No. Is that number in the ones place a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Yes, that number is an 8. So we need to round our 10 up the number line. Remember, we're only changing this number here. So if I need to round up the line, what number comes after 4? 5. Very good. So the 4 in our tens place is going to change to a 5. And this number is now going to change to a 0. So the number 48 rounded to the nearest 10 would be 50. Let's try another one. Number 2. We have the number 32. The first thing that I need to do is put a box around the tens place because that's the number that I'm rounding. So go ahead with me and draw a box around the tens place. And we need to look next door. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, round that number to the floor. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, round that number up the line. Next door is a number 2. So we need to keep our tens place on the floor. The number 3 in our tens place is going to stay the same. And everything to the right is now going to change to a 0. So the number 32 rounded to the nearest 10 is 30. Let's move on to number 3, 85. We are going to put a box around the tens place because that's what I'm rounding to. And we need to look next door to see where we are going to round this number. So looking at the number 5, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, keep that number on the floor. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, round that number up the line. Well, the number 5 next door tells me to round that number up the line. So the number 8, the one that we're rounding, is going to round up. So the number 8 is now going to change to a 9. And everything to the right of that number is going to change to a 0. So the number 85, rounded to the nearest 10, is 90. All right, number 4, we have one digit here. Uh-oh. So When you have one digit and you're rounding to the next place value, you need to say your rhyme again. Is this number 1, 2, 3, or 4? No. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Yep. So we're going to round that number up the line. So the next benchmark number is the number 10. So 7, you can imagine a 0 in front of the 7. 7 is going to round this 0 to a 1, and everything else is going to change to a 0. So the number 7, rounded to the nearest 10, is going to be the number 10. Moving on, number 5, 6, and 7, these are 3-digit numbers, but we are still rounding to the nearest 10. So we're still going to be putting a box around that tens place. In the number 148, what number is in the tens place? Right, the number 4. So we're going to put a square or a box around the number 4. And we're going to look to the right to tell us whether or not we're going to keep that number on the floor or round that number up the line. So looking at the number 8, is that 0, 1, 2, 3, 4? No. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9? Yeah, round that number up the line. Now here's the tricky part. We are only going to be rounding this number, and then everything to the right is going to become a 0, and everything to the left is going to stay the same. This is where it gets tricky. So, we didn't do anything to this hundreds place. Keep the 100 the same. So we still have 100. Now in the tens place, remember we needed to round that number up the line. So what comes after 4? Right, the number 5. So we're going to round the number 4 in our tens place to 5 tens. And then everything else to the right turns to a 0. So the number 148 rounded to the nearest 10 is 150. That was tricky. Let's try another one. Number 6 says 483. What place value are we rounding to? Excellent, the tens place. Which number in this 483 is in the tens place? Yeah, the number 8. So the first thing we need to do is put a square or a box around the number 8. Now, look next door. We have a number 3. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, keep that number on the floor. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, round that number up the line. If I have a number 3, are we going to keep that number on the floor or are we going to round up the number line? Yeah, we're going to keep this number at the floor. So this tens place is not going to change. Here's where it gets tricky. Remember, I told you you're not going to do anything to the hundreds place, so the 4 in the hundreds place is going to stay the same. Write the number 4 in the hundreds place. We decided that the number 8 in the tens place is going to stay on the floor, so we're going to keep that 8 in the tens place, and then anything after we are going to turn to a 0. So we have a 0 in our ones place. So the number 483 rounded to the nearest 10 is 480.